Awesome, awesome. It's so great having everyone here today across all our locations as we continue this incredible series, Young and Purposed. You know, a couple weeks ago, we had the message brought to us for Young and Purposed Part 1 by our mixed student movement, and it was unbelievable. But today, we get to experience the message like never before, because today in the house, we will have Pastor Mike Johnson from FC Kids. We have arguably one of the greatest children's movements in all the world. So Fellowship Church, get ready to experience the message right now as only FC Kids can bring it.
It was a dark and dreary and unusually cold day as I look out across this windswept plain. But this depressing atmosphere is being caused by more than just the weather. This dark mood is being enhanced perfectly by the spiritual darkness that's hanging in the air. Under these clouds today, evil decisions will be made. Decisions of compromise, decisions of conformity, but hopefully, as we shall see, decisions of heroism as well. As I watch, drizzle begins to fall as the gathered officials begin to enter onto this plain called Dura. They have been gathered here for a dedication. But what they do not know is that they've been called here to do more than just participate in a ceremony. They have been called here by the king to show allegiance to him. They will show him that they serve only him, that they worship only him. And if they don't, they'll be put to death. As the men gather together in the middle of this plain, they see it. Rising up above them out of the ground, standing 90 feet tall above their heads, is a golden statue. This is to be the object of their affection, a man-made conglomeration of metal and sweat that has no more spiritual value than the ground that they walk upon. An inanimate, lifeless, powerless object that can do nothing for them. But this isn't the only object on the plains of Dura today. Set off to the left of this golden statue is a blazing furnace. A furnace that is burning so hot that even from a great distance away, the heat from its flames can be felt. It stands there, giving off a warmth that beckons the men to draw closer on this chilly day. But make no mistake, this fire was not provided as a source of comfort. It was provided as a source of death. It will be an instrument of punishment for those who choose not to obey, those who choose not to bow down before the golden idol of the king. Now, for most of the officials in attendance, bowing down before a golden idol is no big deal. They have no system of beliefs that taught them that they should worship the one and only true God. But for three of the men standing there, bowing before this golden idol was a big deal. For they had been taught when they were very young that they should worship only the God of their ancestors, only the one true God. And this golden idol was not him. Three officials who were born as Jews and in their late teens had been taken captives and brought to Babylon to serve within the court of Nebuchadnezzar, and with God's help rose within the power of his court until finally reaching positions that any man would do anything to keep. But these positions were positions of obedience, an obedience that up to this point they had freely given. But to do this, to bow before this golden idol, was an obedience they couldn't give. At this time, a decree is given, and it's stated that when the music begins to play, every knee of every man must bow down and worship the idol, or they will be put to death by being thrown into the fiery furnace. The tension mounts as the three men look at each other, but without saying a word, they all know what they must do. After a short moment, the music begins to play, and one by one, every knee of every official bows to the ground as they stick their face into the mud. All of the officials except for the three. They will not bow. Instead, they stay standing, hoods covering their heads, arms outstretched, faces pointed toward the heavens, standing amidst a sea of prostrate leaders, unbowed, waiting for the inevitable. Quickly they are dragged from the crowd. They are pushed toward the king's structure, and they stumble as they try to keep up with the pace, knowing that in their hearts they may have just given up their privileged positions forever. As they reach the king's platform, they're pushed up the steps and ushered into the king's presence. And here, the final stage is set. Decisions will be made here. Evil decisions, compromising decisions, or heroic decisions. A final opportunity is given by the king, and he says to them, his eyes full of rage, that any man would dare come and defy him in his court. He says to them, I will give you one more chance to bow. And then he leaned forward in his throne and through gritted teeth said, but if you do not, I will throw you into the blazing furnace. And then, what God will be able to save you from my power? When the three men heard this, they took off their hoods, slowly raised their heads, and they said these words, O Nebuchadnezzar, we don't need to defend ourselves before you. If we are thrown into the blazing furnace, our God has the power to rescue us. Our God has the power to save us from your hand. But even if he doesn't, we will not bow before your idol. We will not ever worship your gods. When the king hears this, he literally dives into a fit of rage. He orders that the fires be turned up 7 times hotter than they have ever been turned up before. He calls out for his strongest men to come and bind Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. Like cattle, their hands and their feet are bound together as they are drugged toward the mouth of the flame. As they get closer, the heat in the air begins to rise. First, it's uncomfortable, then unbearable. And finally, it gets to the point where even the strong men can go no further. And right before they themselves are incinerated in the flames, they take Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego and toss them into the fire. Standing up for what you believe in is sometimes a very difficult thing to do. It takes a great inner strength, an inner strength that these three men had. A strength that told them that even though they could die for their decision, they would not back down. They would not choose the path of disobedience. They would not choose the path of compromise. They would not choose the path of evil. Instead, they would choose the heroic yet difficult path of obedience. But a fiery death is not the end of this story. For you see, there will be no more suffering on this day. For the God of these three Jewish men is not going to let them die. He is going to protect them, and he is going to answer the king's question of which God has the power to save them from his hand by showing them that he has that power, and he will do it now. In the fire, where there was once three, there is now four, as God is now walking among them in a light blazes from the furnace. The king, looking in disbelief, falls back into his chair for a minute, 2 minutes. He can't believe his eyes until finally, with great fear, he calls the three men to come out of the furnace and stand before him. And when they get there, weak from the ordeal, he realizes that they don't even smell of smoke and their clothes are not even singed. The three men stand in front of him. And at that moment, the conviction of God falls upon Nebuchadnezzar. And he stands upon his throne, his knees weak, his hands trembling, and he makes this proclamation to all of the people. Praise be to the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. He sent his angel to rescue his servants who trusted in him. They defied the king's command and were willing to die rather than serve or worship any god except their own. Therefore, I make this decree. If any people, whatever their race, whatever their nation, whatever their language, speaks a word against the God of Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, they will be torn limb from limb. For there is no other God who can rescue like this. Doing the right thing at the most difficult of times only comes with God's help and a strong moral character. Being able to stand up in the face of peer pressure, or being able to put down those thoughts in your mind, those logical thoughts that say, maybe this time it would be wise to stand back and not do the right thing. Those things only come when godly values are part of your moral DNA. Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego knew in their heads that bowing down before a golden idol was wrong. But I don't believe that that's what gave them the moral fortitude to stay standing. I believe that what gave them the moral standing to do that was what was in their heart. I have one simple goal this morning for all of you. I want to completely change your view of children from the viewpoint that you walked in just a few minutes ago. And I'm confident, in fact, I'm 100% confident that I'm going to be able to do it. I've given my life to working with kids, Why? Because of stories like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego, of young men and women in the Bible who were able to stand in the face of great adversity because of what was poured into them. So the question is how did that happen? How did Shadrach and Meshach and Abednego become like they were? Well, the answer's in the Bible, and it's found in Deuteronomy chapter 6, 5 through 9, which says this: Love the Lord your God with all your heart, with all your soul, with all your mind, and with all your strength. These commandments that I am to give to you today are to be upon your hearts. Impress them upon your children. Talk about them when you sit at home and when you walk along the road. Tie them as symbols on your hands and bind them to your foreheads. Write them on the door frames of your houses and your gates. What is this saying? This is saying that there is a responsibility that all of us have as relatives, as friends, as neighbors, as parents, to impress upon our children godly values and commands. And not just impress it upon them, not just give it to them, but give it to them at the appropriate time when they're children. Proverbs 22:6 says this: Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. I laugh really at the simplicity of this verse. It's not rocket science, is it? When I was in college, I got my undergraduate degree in clinical psychology, and then I got my master's degree in biblical studies. And as I think back in my college degree, and I think about all of the great developmental psychologists and moral and cognitive thinkers, Jean Piaget, Lawrence Kohlberg, who pretty much spent all of their lives working and studying to come up with the understanding that what we were exposed to when we were young becomes part of who we are when we're older. I think about all that time that they spent learning that they didn't need to if they just would have looked at this one simple verse. Train up a child in the way he should go, and when he is old, he will not depart from it. But just to prove a point, don't just take God's word for it. Let's take a look at what developmental psychologists say about the developmental process of children. I want to show you a graph up here on the screen. It's a pretty interesting graph. The first one is our cognitive development. Now, cognitive development is our ability to deduce, to reason, to problem solve. It begins at about the age of 2, and it peaks out at about the age of 35, which is not so good news for guys our age, because it doesn't mean that our cognitive development has stopped. It just means it's on the decline, okay? Right now, I'm probably about the cognitive development of like a 28-year-old, so that's not too bad, all right? It's just on the way down. But what's interesting is not that, but the green line. Because totally different from our cognitive development is our moral development. As you see, our moral development begins also around the age 1 and 2, but it peaks out at about the age 11, and by the time we're 16, our moral development is almost 90% set. So to help us out, just to understand this graph just a little bit better, I've got some friends that I'm going to bring up here in a prop that I'm going to have them bring out on stage. Give a big round of applause for Jeff and Tatum Grubb. These guys have been serving, well, not Tatum. She was born here at the church, which is awesome. Nothing greater than to see kids born in the church, raised in the church, the legacy that she's had when she turns 18, 19, to have grown up in a church, and always the rest of her life to be able to say, Fellowship Church is my church. That's a gift that is unbelievable. And I hope many of you can give that to your kids. Jeff and I have been serving together here for 15 years here at Fellowship Church. He and his wife serve every weekend in the children's department. Jeff leads up on the stage in the 4th and 5th grade. His wife, Lori, leads up on the stage in the kindergarten, 1st grade. And they, as many of you, are a family that epitomizes a family that has built and orbited their life around Fellowship Church, and their girls are a result of that. So I've asked them to come up here on the stage because I want to explain this graph to you. Now, if you remember, I said there is a window that starts at about age 2 and closes by the age of 16, that moral window, okay? This window is going to be represented by this slide that I'm going to pull out. Now, this sphere represents this very, very beautiful young lady, Tatum, okay? This is her life. Down here is her heart, what I talked about in Deuteronomy. Impress that upon your heart. Up here represents her cognitive ability, her heads. Everybody got it? Nod their heads. I got it. Excellent. All right. Now, this first tube basically represents what happens with most of us. We don't always have a strong moral plan to build into our children. In fact, when we do implant morals into them, it's usually more in kind of a haphazard way. And most of the time, any development we do give them is in the form of discipline rather than positive moral growth. So Jeff is just going to kind of casually toss them in. The window is going to open starting at year 2. It's open, open, open. It's now at the age of 11. The window is closing, and we're done. All right. Well, we've got some morals and values down inside Tatum's heart, which is good. Jeff, if you'll pour some more into the brain. Because you know what? What happens when we hit 16, it doesn't mean we stop learning morals and develop morals and principles. But what happens is, instead of those morals and principles going into our heart like they were designed to, those morals and principles now reside strictly in our heads, which is better than nothing at all. But you know what the problem is? Is that when they're just in our heads, they are so easy to rationalize away, aren't they? When I don't believe it in my heart, when I have that conviction like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego had, where they said, I cannot, it goes against every fiber of my body to bow. That's when you stand. Up here, well, you know, maybe this time, it just might be best to not do the right thing. Tatum, please come over here to this next. This is going to represent the way I know Jeff and Lori really work with Tatum and her younger sister. They're going to be pouring these morals in as I open the window, and once again, starting at age 2, the window begins to open. We get to the age of 10, the window begins to close, and it's now shut. All right, now obviously, there are still some morals and values that we're going to miss. None of us are perfect. But look at all of the morals and values that have been poured down into her heart during this strategic time. These are the morals and values that, when built inside of her heart, will give her the moral fortitude to do what's right no matter what circumstances she finds herself in. Let's give them a big round of applause. Thank you, guys. You guys are awesome. Thank you. What's frustrating to me is we spend so much time working on the cognitive development of our kids. We send them to school, we send them to college, but we spend no time developing their moral values. Why is that? If developmental psychologists tell us that we have to be pouring into our children from 2 to 16, or else the window opens and shuts and we're done. And if even someone who has a little bit more authority than the developmental psychologist, the God of the Bible, says that, why is it that we don't take kids more seriously? Why is it that we don't really emphasize this as parents? Well, I think there's a couple reasons. Got some pictures. First of all, you look at them, they're silly. They run around. They disobey. Looks like my daughter in her room. They have, most of the time, act like they're not paying attention and not listening. And if you've been over to the nursery at diaper changing time, they're smelly. All of these things establish in our mind that, you know what? They're just kids. All this craziness on the outside, they're just not getting, this is just a time to get through. But you know what? All of the chaos on the outside is the exact opposite of the moral fortitude that's happening or not happening and being built to them on the inside. So what do we do? How do we change this? Because I want to give you guys handles. I don't want you just to go out here and feel convicted. Yeah, we got to teach our kids morals. I want to give you two things that if you will do these, parents, and those of you who know parents, and those of you who know parents of other parents and other parents, if you will do these two things, you can make a difference in our city and our country, and as I'm going to tell you a little bit, even our world. The first thing that you can do is if you really do believe what I just said, and all developmental psychologists say, if you really believe that children only have a short window of time where morals and values can be built into their life, why are you not here every weekend? And I know that's convicting for a lot of us because I understand there's a lot of things, life is busy. We got a lot of things going on. We got sports, we got academics. But this time frame is so short, it's so important. You cannot ignore what we offer in FC Kids, the pastors who spend all week long building a moral lesson from God's Word to teach your kids on the weekend so that it can be poured into them, and you're not here. Don't let that happen. Get to camp. I know that for some of you, the cost is a little high, but you know what? There is no greater thing, parents, that you can invest your money in than sending your kids and students to Owasso Ranch. 24/7, 6 days a week, they're immersed in a godly environment with godly adults where morals and values are being poured into them at an unbelievably important time. Camp is huge. And this one's a little sensitive because I understand sometimes kids are like, I don't want to go to children's church, mom and dad. But it breaks my heart when on Saturday night I sit up in the balcony and we look at the service. And I look out over the auditorium and I see kids out here. Kids that are 5th grade and under. Those kids, Pastor Ed works extremely diligently to craft a message that's designed for students and adults, not for kids. That's our job. Your kids need to be in children's church. And if they say, I don't want to go today, you go, I'm sorry, you're going. Because you know how important it is that they have those values built into their lives. The time is not to be their friend. The time is to be the leader in the family, and you know what's best for them, so make it happen. The last one of part one is volunteer. You know what? All of you have something to give. It may not be working with kids in a classroom, but it could be greeting, it could be doing anything, but all of you have something to give. And you have an opportunity to change a life, literally. If you really do believe that the morals and values that we pour into children from the ages 2 to 16 is what makes them into the person that they will be for the rest of their life, you need to be involved in doing that. You need to be involved in the mix on Wednesday night. You need to be involved in junior high as that window is beginning to close. And you need to be involved in preschool and FC Kids. Here's the second one, and this is the one I'm most excited about because it affects everybody in this room and everybody in this United States and ultimately everybody in the world. We as a church have developed an app. Pull out your phones right now, your smartphones and your iPhones, your Androids, whatever. When you pull it out, you go to your app store, I want you to type in 3 words, Leadership for Kids. It's a free app for everybody. All you have to do is download it. Once a month, there will be 2 leadership videos that will teach godly morals and values to your children in preschool and in elementary. There will also be a weekly leadership tip that will be a video that will be 90 seconds that will be information about things that they need to know to become the leaders that God designed them to be. There's study questions, and for those of you families that like to do such things, there's even a family activity that goes along with that. We have a very exciting opportunity as a church, and I just want to brag on all of you because you need to know this. We are going to be having an opportunity to translate all of our leadership lessons, all 250 leadership lessons that you also have access to at leadershipforkids.tv. Your kids could be going into God's Word, watching these videos daily during this important time, and I encourage all of you to sign up for that. But this is what's going to happen. We are partnering with an organization that is going to take this message, these 250 leadership lessons. You know where they're taking them? Over the next year and a half, they're going into China. And they say within 1 year, they will be in front of over 1 million Chinese children. Potentially, in 3 to 5 years, 5 to 10 million. You want to talk about changing the world? We change our kids. We put the morals and values into them in this critical time. We don't let that window open and shut and do nothing. That's what this tool is designed to do. And I thank all of you because it's through your generosity that we're able to provide an app with these leadership lessons that can make a movement, not just in the Dallas-Fort Worth area, not just in Miami, not just in Columbia, but across the United States and also across the world. You have a part in all of that, and I say thank you for that. We want all of our kids to be like Shadrach, Meshach, and Abednego. We want them to have the moral fortitude to be able to stand up in the face of danger and do the right thing. But if we don't give our kids what they desperately need in the short window, if we push it aside and ignore it, and we don't give them this suit of protection, we're going to be sending them off as adults to struggle and make the wrong decisions. You know, last weekend was Memorial Day weekend, and as I was sitting out in the audience like you guys were, we're celebrating and honoring those who have given their lives and those who are missing in action for our freedoms and those who are fighting right now all over the world for us so that we can have this freedom. I began to think to myself this. What if we had the knowledge, the skills, the technology to make a suit that could protect our soldiers? It could protect them from bullets, landmines, rockets, and suicide bombers. But unbelievably, we just didn't understand the importance of giving this suit to them. So instead of doing anything and everything to put this suit into the hand of our soldiers, we don't give it to them. We send them off to battle, to stand on the front lines, to get wounded, to hopefully survive and get put back together. And it's then that we get serious about giving this suit to them. Then, if we neglected our soldiers in this way, what kind of people would we be? But let me ask you another question. What if we had such a suit that could protect our children as they encounter life? A suit built with knowledge, with skills, with values that would guard them from the dangers of this world. But again, unbelievably, because we didn't understand the importance of the power of the suit we had to give, we pushed it aside. We allowed other things to take its priority. Well, I feel I must tell you, we have such a suit of hope, of character, of leadership, a kind of suit that is better than military armor because it is designed to protect a heart that will live beyond this world. But if we don't give this suit to our kids during this most critical time in their life, we might as well be saying to them, we're going to let you go out and face the bullets of bad choices, the rockets of regrets, the landmines of negative influences. And if you survive, then we'll get serious about giving you the protection that you need. then. Thank God we are not a people of then. We are a people of now. We will take our stand in the battle for our children, and we will face the enemy who comes against us. We won't wait for pain to teach our children about the God who heals. And we won't wait until mistakes to teach them the character qualities found in His Word. We will do it now, when they're listening, when they're learning, when they're growing. We will give them the tools. We will give them the knowledge. We will give them a relationship with the Almighty King and ruler of this world. Give your best and fight for your children. Don't ever say to yourself, they're just kids. For it is now that they deserve our utmost drive, our passion, and our commitment. For the kingdom of heaven belongs to them.